Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, February 3rd. From the San Antonio Express News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect sunny skies and a high of 75 degrees in San Antonio today. Thursday will likely be the warmest day of the week, though. President Joe Biden has signed a second spate of orders to undo his predecessor's policies, demonstrating the powers of the White House and its limitations without support from Congress. We have everything you need to know about his orders on family separation, border security, and legal immigration over at expressnews.com. Biden's predecessor, former President Donald Trump, is facing impeachment on a charge of inciting insurrection. On Tuesday, his lawyers made a first formal answer to the charges, denying Trump's responsibility for the deadly riot. And now let's move on to our top stories for the day. The Texas National Guard has quarantined soldiers in a San Antonio hotel who tested positive after returning home from duty in Washington, D.C., where they were deployed to provide security for the presidential inauguration. Troops getting off the plane at Lackland answered health questionnaires, were given temperature checks, and took a coronavirus test. Those showing symptoms or testing positive were sent to the hotel and expected to stay in quarantine for 10 to 14 days. Sig Christensen has details on the accommodations and the number of troops involved in his latest article. Rackspace Technology co-founder Graham Weston and his wife have each filed divorce papers to end their 26-year marriage. The case has the potential to be one of the biggest divorces in the San Antonio area in recent years. The split has gotten combative, with allegations that Graham Weston sexually assaulted his wife and had had several extramarital affairs with women in London, including one who may have tried to blackmail him. Elizabeth Weston is accused of recording her husband and hiring a private investigator to track him for a year and a half. The divorce case centers on whether the wealth Graham Weston has amassed over his career is his own or community property that belongs to them both. He apparently intends to argue he has placed the vast majority of assets accumulated during the marriage in a trust that he controls. We have everything you need to know about the case over at expressnews.com. Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolff has asked the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo to postpone its event or prepare for the difficult job of being vigilant about preventing the spread of COVID-19. Wolff sent a letter to the rodeo chairwoman as the same day the Fiesta San Antonio Commission announced a decision to postpone the annual Fiesta celebration from April to June 17 through the 27th. Several Fiesta events have announced they'll skip 2021 altogether and aim to return in April 2022. In his letter to Loeffler, Wolff said the rodeo has every right to proceed under its lease with the county, as long as it follows Governor Greg Abbott's emergency orders. Read more about the letter and the current rodeo plan in Scott Huddleston's latest article. Columnist Gilbert Garcia writes, quote, "If Fix SAPD succeeds in its mission to eliminate collective bargaining for police officers, the city would have to formulate a new process for negotiating police contracts. That would almost certainly mean a move to a meet and confer system. While some defenders of collective bargaining tend to describe such a move as a potential traumatic blow to labor relations in San Antonio, if this city went to meet and confer, we'd actually be in alignment with other big cities in Texas. At this point, San Antonio is the Texas outlier with its use of collective bargaining," Garcia writes. You can read his full column over at expressnews.com. Friday will be the last day of COVID-19 testing at the AT&T Center. Community Labs, a nonprofit that has offered screening in the area, is opening 2 new testing sites to replace the facility. You can find the COVID-19 testing site closest to you by entering your address in our interactive dashboard, which you can find over at expressnews.com. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside of your Express News subscription. San Antonio health officials discouraged local schools from allowing athletics as the region continues to record a heavy death toll from COVID-19, even as transmission of the virus and the numbers of coronavirus patients in area hospitals decline. The popular marching band festival and competition held during Fiesta each year has been canceled. The city's annual 10-day Fiesta celebration was postponed from April to June, but the Battle of Flowers Band Festival joined the list of canceled events. Starting on February 11th, CVS will provide COVID-19 vaccinations to eligible residents at drugstores across Texas, including in San Antonio and Laredo, but there's not much of it yet. The SpaceX SN9 Starship prototype launched more than 6 miles above South Texas on Tuesday. Like its predecessor, SN8, the SN9 vehicle, landed in a fireball. Governor Greg Abbott wants to shield Texas businesses and healthcare providers from COVID-19 related lawsuits, making liability protections an emergency item for state lawmakers this session. San Antonio City Councilman Clayton Perry has been hospitalized with COVID-19 after testing positive for the virus the previous day, according to his office. Fix SAPD board members E.J. Pinnock and James Dykeman were guests on this week's episode of the Express News' Puro Politics podcast. Assistant City Manager Carlos Contreras is leaving his city post to head nonprofit Goodwill San Antonio after more than a decade in municipal government, officials announced this week. This fiscal year was the first real test of a new law limiting large Texas cities and counties to 3.5% budget increases annually as the state legislature tries to tamp down spiraling property taxes. At least 45 local governments either went over 3.5% limit or considered doing so by using an escape clause. USAA has named a new president for USAA Federal Savings Bank, which has come under regulatory scrutiny over the last 2 years, and hired a chief risk officer for the company. You can meet the new executives over at expressnews.com. Toyota started off 2021 strong in sales in January, a trend mirrored throughout the auto industry last month that suggests the worst of the pandemic-driven downturn may be over for vehicle manufacturers. Legislation has been introduced in Texas that would ban chokeholds and require police officers to de-escalate situations involving excessive force. The Express News editorial board has more on that in their latest editorial called Real Change in Legislation, named after George Floyd. After nearly a year-long absence, the San Antonio Symphony returns to the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts this weekend for a pair of performances. Safety considerations mean concerts will be shorter than usual with fewer musicians on stage. Sports columnist Mike Finger writes, quote, "The NBA is taking coronavirus protocols so seriously that opposing players are banned from shaking hands after games. So, should an all-star attempting to save an errant pass from going out of bounds really run the risk of winding up in the lap of a fan who casts aside a mask or chug a beer?" Brandon Lingle writes, quote, "President Donald Trump's disdain for journalists percolated across the country, even reaching some of my friends and family who'd say things like, 'the media is the enemy.' Then came the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, where rioters assaulted photojournalists, scrawled 'murder the media' on the walls, wore t-shirts with the same message, and destroyed a pile of journalists' gear. While that's one extreme, another is developing in the business world, especially among tech companies, the silent treatment. Read the full story, a collaboration with Report for America, over at expressnews.com. It all starts with a cast iron over a grill and ends with a crunchy breading that really clings to the meat and a thick, flavorful gravy with plenty of pepper. Chuck Blount has tips on how to make the best chicken fried steak at home in his latest Chuck's Food Shack. The new Leica Cheesecake Factory and Espresso in Alamo Heights is making some of the best cheesecake you'll find anywhere in San Antonio. Having lost consecutive games to the Grizzlies by a total of 48 points, the Spurs are glad to have Minnesota in town. In truth, they would be happy to play anyone else but Memphis. Bliss, a trippy new movie with Owen Wilson and Salma Hayek, is on our list of what's new or notable in home video. The regular signing period for college football opens Wednesday. We have where UTSA and UIW stand in their 2021 recruiting classes over at expressnews.com. And that's all for today. This was your Express Briefing for Wednesday, February 3rd. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all the stories you heard today. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcast app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.